Sueli and us, we discussed how to present this panel. Brazil is a challenging country to do business, and challenges always come together with opportunities. And I would like to start with the very beginning decision process from an American perspective. Usually, when the U.S. investors decides to move to Brazil and establish a company there, and then we can discuss the incorporation stage, the incorporation process of doing business in Brazil, how to incorporate a business in Brazil. So let's get started. Otávio, we want to take the first step and discuss a little bit about the decision process, what you have seen on your experience as how the U.S. investor thinks and when does he decide to move to Brazil?
I have been advising foreign clients that want to do business in Brazil for 2 decades. Sueli is right. Brazil is not an easy country to do business in, but it's not the worst either. Actually, if you plan ahead of time what you're going to do there, what are your goals, what are your challenges, and try to discuss that with an expert, be it an accountant, be a lawyer. So if you plan ahead of time, you'll be able to navigate in the bureaucratic waters of Brazil more easily. So in this decision-making process, the first question that I think you have to make is, am I ready to have a business in Brazil, a establishment, a branch, or a local office, a local presence in Brazil? Or do I want to start first with an agency agreement or a distribution agreement with someone in Brazil? So the first thing to keep in your mind is Brazil has a different legal system than the United States. Here, it's a common law-based system. There, it's a civil code type of system. So, but it's not, in a way, it's not as complicated as one can imagine. For instance, here, each state in the United States has its own laws. In Brazil, basically, I would say 80, perhaps 90% of the issues are dealt with in the federal environment. We have federal laws. So the civil code is just one. And that's the only civil code that you see interpreted by the courts in Brazil. So it makes it easier. Wherever you are in Rio or in Rondônia doing business, it's the same law. What is different are the local laws in terms of taxation, in terms of licensing process. Those may be different from one city to the other, one state to the other. But they all interact with our federal constitution. So at the end of the day, they have to respect our federal constitution. So if a state, tries to breach a principle that's in a federal constitution, you can challenge that principle in a state court. You don't need to go to the Supreme Court at first. Coming back to the point when making the decision, so let's say you decide to make an agency agreement or distribution agreement. Be aware that we have laws dealing with that are from the 1940s. And basically that's a law that was enacted to protect individuals that would be dealing and representing retailers in a number of cities in Brazil. So it has indemnification, it has how much you have to pay if you want to terminate an agreement. If you don't write in your agreement that it's non-exclusive, it's deemed to be exclusive, so be careful. If you choose the courts of, let's say, Tampa to govern that agreement, it may not be upheld by the Brazilian courts because this law was made to protect the agent, not the company that's hiring the agent. One piece of advice to avoid that is use arbitration. Then you have a better chance to apply foreign law to your contract. So this is in principle. So you start to do business, you start with a distributorship contract with someone in Brazil, start to sell your goods there, you start to get used to it, you start to understand the tax system. It's very complex, we're going to talk about that. So the next stage is, perhaps now I'm going to open a business, a company in Brazil. So what I have to do, am I going to do it alone or am I going to find a local partner? If the decision is I'm going to do that with a local partner, Am I going to be the majority shareholder of that business, or am I going to be the minority shareholder of that business? And why I'm saying that? Because depending on the situation, there is a better form of company to be used. So in Brazil, basically, you have two types. It's a limitada, limited liability company, or a corporation. Corporation can be closed or open. In most of the cases, when you're going alone to Brazil to open your own business, the limitada will be the best choice. From a tax perspective, in Brazil, it doesn't make a difference. From a tax perspective in the US, I know it does make a difference. And you have to consult with your US experts.
Can I just pause you there to give my take on this topic? As a limitada in Brazil, you can check the box and have that entity disregarded for US tax purposes. Okay, so you can consolidate all the gains and profits and losses that you incurred in Brazil and all the tax that you have paid in the US. In Brazil, you can net them, credit them here in the US. So that's part of the decision process. Okay, Luis will speak a little further about the Brazilian tax system, and he could be here for days speaking about the Brazilian tax system. It's very complicated, especially sales tax for those that are involved in products and sales rather than services only. It varies by state, it varies by product. Luis will give more detail on this. But that's a very, very, very important aspect of how to incorporate. Another topic that's very important also comes every time that we advise a US client. Do I need a local representative? Do I need a Brazilian individual to be the manager of my company? Yes. Yes, and you know that, right? Yes. That's very, very sensitive point. Why is that so? Because first, in the US, you don't need such person, okay? A foreign individual can be a manager of an LLC or an officer of a corporation. Don't even need to be here in the country. In Brazil, it's different. You need a Brazilian resident or a foreign person with the right to work in Brazil. And why is that so sensitive? Because you need to find that person. Do not make a mistake of appointing your employee to that role. Okay? And why is that so? Well, the operational side, more than likely, there will be some problems with that person, right? That's life of a business. You will have some problems with that person, you argue with him, and at some point in time, you may find yourself in the situation that you need to fire him. Guess who is going to sign that he's being fired? Himself. Yeah. Okay? Your employee will run the company, your employee will sign the papers under power of attorney that that person will grant, okay, but do not grant the corporate management to that person. So, and that employee, that person that I'm calling employee, can be hired under two labor system. One is, it can be hired under a pro labore arrangement, that's not really a labor contract. Or it can be hired as an employee. The difference are the charges that are paid by the company and the charges that are paid by the individual. However, if you hire that person, if you send him a job letter in dollars, in US dollars, with the annual salary, later on the road, this guy may get back to you and say, look, you have not been paying all my benefits. And by the way, the exchange rate has been fluctuating. And in Brazil, we have a principle that a salary cannot be reduced. So that time that the exchange rate went up, that's my base salary. And I want to calculate all my benefits based on that salary. And that's something that happens a lot. All the salary will be the calculation basis for several taxes.
Yes.
What are the tax regimes in Brazil? Go ahead, Luis.
Talking a little bit about taxes, our corporate taxes over profits is not that high. I'm talking about 34% over profits. It's in the middle, like about the world experience. Here, the most common rate in the US, because here in the US you have the state rate and also the federal tax rate over profits, is something around 35%. So to pay 34% over profits in Brazil is not that bad. But there's something more to tell
There is
you
always a
about.
but.
Yeah, I think that Jean-Paul Sartre said that the hell is on the details. Yes. When you receive your money as an employee, you are not going to be highly taxed as here in the US or in the European nations. You are taxed just 25, 27%. That's okay. It's not that bad. But the taxation in Brazil is very cruel because it's very high over the consumption. For example, any laptop that you can buy in Best Buy in Brazil or in a similar shop, you will buy something around 60% of taxes over this. Or if I go to any store here in the US, if I go to a Foot Locker and if I say sneakers that I like very much, a New Balance one, I know that I'm going to pay like 7 or 8% of VAT. But in Brazil, this charge can reach the absurd 50 or 60%, depending on the essentiality of the good. In Brazil, the really tax hell is on the consumption taxes. It's not about the income tax itself. And it's something very bad for two reasons. Because the poor and the rich, they pay the same tax, first thing. And second thing, it's a kind of invisible tax. So you are not aware that you are paying 3,000 reais in a laptop and 2,000 reais is composed by tax. So you are not like a tax citizen because you don't know how it really works in Brazil. And there's something very bad also about the Brazilian tax system is the fact that not only the profits are taxed in Brazil, but also the revenues. And it's something very high. It can reach 9% of the revenues. So sometimes a company can be non-profitable in Brazil. A company can have losses like the last 5 years, but the company is paying taxes over revenues. Okay, it's something that it's a little strange to the guys who are not from Brazil. But I have some good news. Our new government is a lot more business-oriented than the leftist government we had in the last 13 years in Brazil. A real tax reform project is being discussed on our Congress, and the president is itself involved in making it be approved. And on this tax reform, we are going to replace 7 taxes for 2 ones. So possibly the charge is going to be still burdensome, but things are going to be a lot less complex than they are at this moment. Everyone here knows the H&M stores, of course. Okay. These guys, they were studying to come to Brazil since 2010, and they gave up in 2014 because of all this taxation, of all this ICMS, and possibly they are regretted now because Forever 21 made the option to go to Brazil. And when in the beginning, like in the first month of Forever 21, there was lines of 3 or 4 hours to get inside the stores. Possibly H&M now that a tax reform is likely to be approved in Brazil, they of course will join Brazil. But we are a real land of opportunities. We have 200 million inhabitants that are really eager to consume the new iPhone. We are eager to consume foreign universities. We are eager to consume everything that we can consume from abroad. And also we have a very good internal market in Brazil. We have now a limitation on the public expenditure for the next 20 years. And it's something really revolutionary in Brazil because it was a kind of habit that the governments really spend more than they have of money in the previous years. And we have this car wash operation that is something really revolutionary in the compliance, in the way that the government deals with public money. And possibly, I really believe that Brazil is going to teach a lesson on how to deal with these bad guys. And something more about Brazil. Petrobras now, Petrobras is our big oil company in Brazil, and it used to have the monopoly to explore the blocks. Now it doesn't have it anymore. So it's something very good for the guys who work with oil and gas here in this room. Our inflation last year, it was 6%. In the previous year, in 2015, it was 13%. So as we had this substantial reduction, last week our government decided to reduce in 0.75% our interest rate. And everyone here knows when the interest rate is reduced, people reallocate their money. Now they can buy really consumption goods. They can go to the cinema. They can look for real estate and so forth. And talking about real estate, a federal bank in Brazil, that's the bank responsible to give loans to people who would like to buy a house. It's Caixa Econômica Federal. And in the beginning of this month, beginning of the year, their interest rates are also substantially reduced in Brazil. More good news. Yes, I have. Last year, we had only one IPO in Brazilian stock market. This year, there's a forecast of 17 to 20 IPOs in the Brazilian market, and from some very well-known companies in Brazil. Labor reform is something very important because the things will be a lot more straightforward now, that the company can directly discuss with the employee. So things are going to be a lot more straightforward. Yeah, that's okay for now, and I can talk a little about taxes.
Some other things that are important are going on right now. The discussion about our pension laws. If this passes in the Congress this year, that's going to be a huge upside for Brazil, because that will, over the time, reduce the overall deficit that we have, and that's huge. So that will help our economy recover faster, and that will give, I think perhaps this is even more important, that will give the market a very good sign that Brazil is really in the right direction. So we see that there are talks, politics, a lot of politics, but basically if the current president of the Congress is kept, is re-elected, there is a good chance that this law will pass. Another thing, talking about the land of opportunities, unless if it's postponed, but we may have in March a bid for 4 airports. That's a huge opportunity for investment. Not to mention that, as we all know, the biggest construction companies are all involved in this car wash operation. So what's happening now, there is room for newcomers, for construction companies that want to do business in Brazil. There is room for that. There is an appetite for that, actually, for this bid round. So we see State Grid just made an acquisition in São Paulo of 20 billion. And we see other companies interested in Brazil. Why is that? Because they see that Brazil in the medium to long term will be in the right direction. We see a lot of complaints of Brazil, but people that do business there, that go there and do it in a professional way, Brazil is not a country for amateurs, will succeed,
The H&M and Forever 21 presents a great case. Perhaps here in the audience you have someone thinking, well, my competitor serves Petrobras. I do serve Petrobras. My competitor serves CEMIG, one of the largest energy sector companies in Brazil, listed in the New York Stock Exchange. Maybe my competitor will not take the challenge to go to Brazil, and I will. Forever 21 made that decision. H&M did not. Now they regret, right? So to summary and to sum up everything here for us to close this panel, I would like to close with just pointing out the main red flags and points of concern when doing business in Brazil. I will touch on labor, okay? When choosing the first employee, whether that person will be an outside service contractor or not, whether that person will be as a minority shareholder or not, that has tax implications, that has risks associated with it. So labor is one point of concern.
Is there any type of agreement that we can make with the government where we can have benefits from operating in a social and economic and ecological sustainable manner?
BNDES, the Brazilian National Development Bank, has just come up with a new set of guidelines to provide financing to companies that want to do business in Brazil. They will have key targets that the companies will have to achieve throughout the term of the loan. So one of the items that they are considering is exactly what you just said. If you're a green company, then probably, most likely, your interest rates will be lower than the ones of your competitor. So I think that the Brazilian government has put together this set of guidelines that will help business people that have this kind of mindset to have a different, less burdensome rate to do business in Brazil.
It's a lot more common to see that the foreign companies, they acquire business already existing in Brazil instead of doing a greenfield one. Why they do this? Because to obtain a license in Brazil, especially in pharmaceutical, medical sector, sometimes it's very tricky, it's very difficult. So they prefer to buy something that really exists before, so things are going to be easy. Another good thing about Brazil that's something recent is the fact that now the international companies can invest in healthcare in Brazil, and they can control hospitals in Brazil. They can have 51% of the share. So it's something very good, and we are attracting a lot of companies. United Health did a very big acquisition in Brazil last year because of this new regulation.